Okay, so lab and radiology orders. I did put in your manual, there is a CPOE component for this. It's actually two pieces of a component, 30% of lab orders, 30% of radiology orders. So I think the lab orders is going to be more of a focus since you guys order a lot of labs and it sounds like a lot less radiology type of orders. So we are working with a third-party vendor. Their name is MDON. They're changing it to Change Healthcare. So if you hear either of those, they're kind of synonymous with each other. The main reason we connected with them is because they have a large network of labs that they can work with. I actually just got off the phone with Quest, and we have established our interface with Quest. I wish LabCorp was as responsive as Quest has been, but I am still really hopeful that LabCorp will be connecting with us shortly. I know I've mentioned this before, but Dallas County Hospital has been in communication with MDON. It sounded like most recently that they were considering the interface, so I'm really hopeful that that's also going to happen because I think that's going to really streamline processes that will allow you to send orders electronically and receive results back electronically, which I think would save a lot of time and paper processes. So while we're working on these connections, we have set up a standard lab. The standard lab is basically kind of a generic lab that's been set up. It has the most common lab tests available, and it will allow us to complete our order entry, which is the meaningful use piece for CPOE, so it allows us to do the lab order entry into PANDA, but then we will print a requisition and print a specimen label out of the system. So it's not ideal because I think an electronic process is definitely ideal, but it does allow us to meet meaningful use, which is obviously the most critical element. So you will notice that I am using Internet Explorer. You definitely want to use Internet Explorer for any sort of lab printing. I know I've talked about that previously, but it does make a big difference. The label printing functionality will not work with Chrome. It just doesn't. So we have had the label printer tested and is ready to go 100% at Mingus. I'm waiting on confirmation from Willits on who is testing at Woodward, but that will be done prior to go live for sure. Also Woodward, it sounds like they've ordered some printers for you guys and they should be on their way, so hopefully those will arrive shortly also. All right, so I'm going to start this training with the components of the lab and radiologist kind of overview, which we had talked about previously, but then I want to dive right into the recurring orders functionality because I did not talk about that in the previous trainings. I want to focus on that first, and the recurring functionality is basically a standing lab order, just so everybody's clear. I wish they would call it standing, but they call it recurring, so just be aware of that. Components of the lab and radiology orders screen. As you can see, everything is organized by tabs across the top. The identifiers piece, you'll never need to worry about that. That basically allows us to manually match results and orders, but PANDA does that on its own, so there's no reason to even be concerned with that tab or even use it. Patient tab is just that. It provides information about the patient, just a snapshot of their guarantor, health insurance, and demographics. Second tab is the orders tab. I'm getting a little notification that the audio quality may not be good, so if anyone is having any sort of issues hearing me, please put it in the chat box. Orders tab, I think you guys will be spending the most time here just because this is where you come to view orders, create orders, look at any sort of order, see when it was entered, so on and so forth. All can be done from the orders tab. So let me jump right into the recurring tab and creating a recurring or standing order. So the recurring tab, like I said, is like a standing order. Basically allows you to create a standing order and then you can come in and activate it as you need it. It could be set up for weekly, it could be set up for monthly. So I do want to walk through how to create a recurring order so that everyone is clear on that process. So first I'm going to start in the orders screen, orders tab. I'm going to go through create a new order just like we talked about previously. So you'll notice the order type here at the top. This is where I'm going to select that I want to choose a recurring or standing order. Once I do that, I'm going to get a pop-up and it's going to ask me, when do you want this standing order to start and when do you want it to end and how frequently do you want it to occur? So let's start it today. I'll click on my little calendar. Let's say it's going to go for 2 months. Frequency, say we're going to test weekly for this lab order. So you just complete those 3 fields. If you do want it to include weekends, you can check this box here. Go ahead and hit save. So the next steps of this process are exactly the same as creating a regular lab order. So I just need to double check. I don't need to worry about any of these fields here. I don't need to worry about anything in the primary insurance. That stuff's all pulling from PANDA. All I need to worry about is this order information section. So I am going to select the standard lab order, which for now will be the default for all of you, and then I'll just select one of my providers here. You'll notice the collection date and time is grayed out because we're not collecting a specimen at this time. It says I'm cutting out about 80% of the time. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. As I mentioned, please make a comment in the chat box if for some reason you cannot hear the audio or get disconnected to the screen. So just to make sure I'm clear, order type, I'm just going to change this to recurring. I had that pop-up screen. It asked me when I wanted to start my recurring order and when I wanted to end my recurring order. And then it also allowed me to select how frequently I want to have this order. So if it's weekly or monthly, so on and so forth. So you don't need to worry about any of these areas in the top. You just go right to the order information. I'm going to select the standard lab order, and I'm going to select my ordering physician. So for Woodward, you'll have Sue and Dr. Murthy, and for Mingus, you'll have all of your docs appearing there. So just select the correct one from the drop-down. I'm going to hit next. So the next screen is going to be very familiar. It's exactly what we talked about previously. You just need to select your test codes. You need to select your ICD-10 code, and then you need to just click on add order, add to order. So let's say for this I need a CBC, and we're going to add that to the order. And then let's also search for one. How about if I do CMP? Let's find that. Maybe I'll do something that I know for sure is in there because I've searched it before. All right, let's just select one here. If I want, I can save it to my preference list using this here, use selected and save to preference list. It will save it for everybody at Woodward or everybody at Mingus, so please be aware of that. You guys will get this pop-up every once in a while when you're in the e-prescribing screen or in the lab screen. PANDA doesn't recognize your movement as quickly or as easily as it does when you're in these 2 sections, so please just be aware of that. So let's see, I got my lipoprotein. I want to associate that with a different ICD-10 code. Let's do Marianne's F31. I'll pick one from the list here. If I want to save it to my preference list again, I can do that. So you guys can have your preference list grow in any way that you want. If you find that you put something on your preference list and you're like, man, I did not mean to do that, just contact me because I can remove it from the preference list. You have to have admin functionality to remove it, but you as a nurse or a doctor can add it. So just be aware of that. So now I have my second test selected and my second code, and I'm going to add that to the order. If I had instructions for the lab, I would put them here, specific comments. If I wanted to have results sent someplace beyond where they're usually sent, you would put that in the results distribution section. I'm going to go to validate my order. So you'll notice I didn't get the test code screen where it's asking me what code it is or anything like that because I'm not printing this. This is not ready to go. I'm doing the prep work for my standing order. So you'll notice here it says recurring requisition, do not submit. So there's really no reason to print this. I know at Mingus there's been conversation about lab orders. If you guys need to print this to put it in, the folder so that you can keep track of lab orders over time, that's definitely an option also. But this is not a requisition that should be sent to the lab. So now that I've created my recurring order for Pepper Smith, I just want to go back to search. If I hit back to search, it's always going to bring me back to the main screen, main patient chart for this patient. Now if I go to my recurring tab, I'm going to see my recurring order that I just placed. So let's say we decided we're going to activate that order today. It's got to start today. It's going to run every week for the next couple months. So all I need to do is select the recurring order, hit that little checkbox, and hit activate. So this basically is activating the order. This means that you're ready to send it to the lab, or you're ready to print the requisition and send the specimen to the lab. So you'll see there's a few options at the top here. Save and print. If you modify any information in the screen, you'll notice this top section is non-modifiable. It's already been locked down. You've already created this recurring order. You do not need to change any of that information for the patient, guarantor, or primary insurance. Test codes are appearing here. These are the orders that we placed. If I put any information in this bottom section, I want to hit save and print so it saves that information. If I don't need to make any changes to the order, I would always use the validate order. If I'm thinking this is ready to go, I've done everything ahead of time, I just need to get this requisition so it can go to the lab, then I would hit validate order. If I need to edit the order in any way, let's say I got the wrong ICD-10 code associated, or maybe I got the wrong test code, you would click the edit order button. So for the sake of this, we're just going to move forward since we've already created our order and it's accurate. Click validate order. So now it's going to bring me to the test code questions. You can enter the test code for your lab into this field, but it's not required. So just be aware of that. It's available, but it's not necessary. I'm going to save my order. And then now I'm going to get the requisition that needs to go to the lab with the specimen or with the patient if I'm in an outpatient setting. So from here, I would print and send. That's documenting it for meaningful use, that we've had the order entry into the system. That's going to print your label. It's going to print your requisition. Does anybody have, I'm just going to open it up real quick right now, unmute. Does anybody have any questions about the recurring or standing order section that we just talked about? Okay. All right, so let me get back to my main patient screen here. Let me go this way because it'll be faster. All right, even though we placed that recurring order, I'm going to walk through placing just a standard lab order. Let's do a miscellaneous order. Let's say we can't find it in the system. So I would go to orders again. I'm going to click on create new order. Don't need to edit this top section. I'm going to select my standard lab. And I'm going to select my provider. Now that that's done, I can hit next. I'll enter my lab test code or my ICD-10 code. So let's say I'm just going to use this miscellaneous test. I've searched the system. I cannot find the lab I need. It's just not available. So I'm just going to use that miscellaneous test. Let's search for an ICD-10 code that we haven't looked up previously. Let's do something with depression in it. Or let me put my asterisk and see if that brings me what I'm looking for. I got one option. Let me do bipolar again, since that one seems to be a lot of ICD-10 codes in there. So once I've selected my my test code and I've selected my ICD-10 code, I just click Add to Order. It's going to appear here. If for some reason I realize I made a mistake, you just click this checkbox and then I click Remove Test. That will clear everything out and allow you to start over again with your order if there was an error made. So I'm going to keep my test. I'm going to go ahead and validate my order. So let's just say this is order number 546, and this is going to be a CBC, even though I know that one is in the system. With the miscellaneous test codes, you guys definitely need to make sure you're putting in exactly what you want, because the lab will not know based on miscellaneous test code, obviously. So from here, I would print and send. I'm going to see my labels. If I need 2 labels, I can change this to 2. Your label printer is going to appear right here. I apologize, I do not have a label printer installed on my computer at home. But the label printer will default. I made sure that the Willits guys set up the printer with the word label in the name. That is actually what causes it to be found automatically and to default into that screen. So you guys should not be having to search for a printer at any point. So I got to make sure I hit that print and send. That's going to print my requisition, print my specimen labels, and also make my recording for meaningful use. All right, let me scroll through, make sure I'm not missing anything. We talked about creating the preference list. We've talked about the code searches. I know the instructions for creating a lab order are very lengthy. I'm hoping that all that detail is helpful, but I know it is kind of a lot. It's many pages. So let's talk about on page 21, editing or deleting an existing order. So if I realize that I have an error in an order that I created, let me see if I got another patient. So one thing to note about editing and deleting an existing order, if it's been transmitted to the lab electronically, you cannot do anything with it at that point. If you edit it in PANDA, it doesn't do any good. You're going to need to call the lab and say, you know what, we have an issue with this, it wasn't entered correctly, so on and so forth, and then you can talk to them about changing the order. You'll notice, and the reason I pulled up this patient, he's got all kind of different lab results in here, but you'll notice that the entered ones, these are really the only ones that can be edited because you have printed the requisition and you're waiting for it to go to the lab with the specimen. If it's been transmitted, it cannot be edited. If it's final report, you know, that one's already been transmitted and the results have actually come back through this PANDA system. So any of these orders that are entered, I can edit these. So let's walk through that process quick just so everybody's clear on it. I'm going to edit this top one. I just need to select it. If I want to delete it, I would just hit delete here. If I want to edit it, I would just click on the order number. I'm going to come to the main screen just like I'm entering an order. Everything's already filled in for me. If I need to edit any of this information, I sure can. Let's say I actually need to enter the lab code itself. Maybe it was entered in error or I needed to add an additional lab to it. It looks like for this order I have just a TSH. It's associated with a F31. Let's just add a lipid panel to this order. I'm going to go ahead and use a preference list. I feel like you guys probably have understanding of the test code search since we have talked about that. So now I've edited my order. It's ready to be validated. I can enter in my test code if needed, but I don't. It's not required. And then here I would hit print and send. I do have information in your manual about removing that test. We did talk about that. So let's talk briefly about the lab results and point of care testing. So I know that's not within the lab and radiology orders screen, but I think this is going to be an important component, especially for Woodward since you guys are not connecting to another lab right now. And Mingus, since LabCorp we're kind of at their mercy with this connection. So when we go live, it's definitely a possibility that you guys will be using the standard lab and have paper results coming back. So let me get to the lab results. You're going to find that under Health, Patient Records, and Lab Results. It is also found within the internal medical encounter so that it's easily accessible by the docs. If you guys have attended provider training or medical 2 training, you will know that I started this conversation about this section with this section is a work in progress and is under construction. We had to create it a certain way for certification. I'm definitely not happy with how it looks, how it operates, the usability of it, any of it. I have requested that this be updated prior to go live. So I'm really hopeful that that is going to happen. I know we have a long list of development things, tweaks and different things in the system that we want to get done, but I know this is an area that I really feel strongly about that is important that we get this modified. So number one, I definitely want from this screen to be able to see what the lab order is. You know, if there's an attached document to be able to download it and view it. So that's going to be some changes made from this main screen. If I need to enter a lab result, the focus needs to be on urine. Let's just do a drug screen here. Urine drug screen. You could put Woodward Academy here. If you want to document Nurse Ann here, you can definitely do that. Abnormal flag. There's a lot of different abnormal flags required for certification. Please pick whatever is most appropriate if there is an abnormal flag of any kind on your result. Result and observation status. I think final results is probably going to be the most likely that you're going to be entering in here. I don't know if it makes sense to enter in labs prior to having that final result, especially if you guys are using this specifically for point of care testing or when results are coming back from the lab on paper. So I'm going to go ahead and select final results. Let's say for this drug screen he has a negative result. So the observation value is going to be the result of the test, whether it's a pregnancy test, whether it's a urine drug screen, a glucose monitoring, whatever sort of point of care testing, you would want to put the observation value here. Data observation would be the date of the test, and date of analysis would be the date of the result, which most of the time, you know, will be the same day, especially when we're talking about point of care testing. But if you sent it to the lab, you want to make sure you're double checking, okay, what was the date this went to the lab? All right, I got the result back the next day, so that you are putting the correct date of analysis and date of observation in here. I really want them to get rid of all of this. I know it can't go away completely because it is required for certification, so I've requested that it kind of be hidden under a button so that we're not worrying about any of these fields, because I just think that this screen kind of just makes me feel a little bit anxious. So those fields that I talked about, though, those are the only ones that are really going to be necessary and important. There will be an upload field available, so if you are getting results back from the quote-unquote standard lab on paper format, what I would come in here, I would document what test was ordered, the observation value, and the date of observation. And you can just attach that upload to it. There's no reason to put in a whole bunch of detail because the lab result itself is just going to be uploaded to the system. I wish there was a way for us to upload results to the lab and radiology orders section, but there is not. So I would just save this screen. Does anybody have questions on point of care testing component, the lab results component? I'm showing that everybody is muted and it just will not let me unmute. I'm not hearing any questions.
Like the people who are,
Go ahead.
looks like the people who are muted have muted themselves.
Okay. I just want to make sure that if anybody did have questions that it wasn't on our end. Okay, I just wanted to cover that because I feel like that is going to be an important component for point of care testing and for lab results that are coming in a paper format. So I do want to talk about a couple of other things. The creating of a manifest. Oops, excuse me, now I got myself in the e-prescribing screen. We're not talking about that today, that's tomorrow. So creating a manifest. You know what, let me make sure that nobody else has questions. The next two sections are going to be specific to probably to Mingus, since they're going to be connecting to LabCorp. Woodward, if Dallas County Hospital decides to connect, we can have a separate training. I know that it may be, in July, it may be December. I don't have any time frame for them as to when they're going to be connecting. So does anybody have any questions at all about lab orders, recurring orders, point of care testing, just any of this functionality that we've talked about so far? You guys are awful quiet today. Okay, well, Woodward, you guys are more than welcome to stay on the line, but I am going to talk about some things that have to do with electronic results coming back, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. So if you guys come across other specific questions you want to talk about, if you guys want to stay on and learn about creating a manifest and viewing lab results in PANDA when you guys do move forward with the interface, it's totally up to you. But please do not feel like you have to stay on the line, because we can do additional training once Dallas County Hospital makes a final decision on the interface.
Okay, we're going to head off then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm taking off too. This is Sue. I'm taking off too then.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Sue.
Amy.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No offense to Woodward, but I don't want any time wasted if they're not going to have this functionality available. So let's talk about creating a manifest. So basically a manifest, as I mentioned, can only be created at sites that connect electronically to the lab. I'm very hopeful LabCorp is going to get on it and get this interface with PANDA set up. Now that we've connected with Quest, I'm really hopeful that they'll see that we are legit, we are ready to connect, we have passed all of our testing, and that they will connect with us. So the manifest is basically a send out log of all specimens that have been, that are going to be submitted to the lab. So it could really be used, I'm not sure, Mingus, with your current workflow, but if you guys collect specimens kind of throughout the day, and at the end of the day, LabCorp comes and picks them up, or somebody from Mingus drops them off on their way home from work, or what that process is. But it basically will provide you a list of all of the specimens that have been collected that day or during that time frame that you select. So you'll notice at the top, you have the manifest button. It's visible from any tab. It's always going to be there when you're in the lab and radiology orders section. I'm going to go ahead and click on manifest. Next, I'm going to make sure I got the correct details in here. This is my test site that I'm working in. I want to select the lab. I'm going to, let me do Quest Diagnostics. So since it doesn't going to apply to the standard lab, I don't want to select the standard lab from that dropdown. Ordering physician, if you leave that blank, it's going to include all providers at your site. So it probably makes a lot of sense to leave that blank if you have a lot of providers that have ordered labs or collected lab specimens for different providers throughout that day. You can add a specific client if you only want specific clients listed in this manifest, but that's not what I'm looking for. You want to select your date. I'm going to backdate this just a little bit because I know I've got different orders coming in. So I'm going to select my date. If I leave the collected to date and time blank, it's going to default to right here, right now. So I want to see a manifest from all tests from 3/1 March 1st all the way to today's date. So that's all the information that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and hit search. And I got a lot of labs in here. So all labs meeting this criteria that you have set forth are going to appear in a list at the bottom of the screen. You can print all. If there's a few on here that I'm thinking, oh, I don't need these 3 or I don't need these 4, you can select whatever ones you want from this list. But if you want all of them to appear on the manifest, I'm going to go ahead and just do print all. So then I'm going to get my manifest. There is a print button at the top. And then I'm going to get my print pop-up box, just like you would if you're printing anything off the internet. So if you want multiple copies of this, make sure you're adjusting that here in the printer pop-up box. You know, the manifest could be placed in a binder for records. They also suggested that you could use it to track when you have received results back from the lab and use the manifest as kind of a checklist to make sure all the results have come back. I know, Mingus, you guys have expressed, you know, there's right now currently in the system, it is difficult to see all lab orders. You know, you can see lab orders for Pink Panda, or I can see lab orders for Pepper Smith, but I can't see all lab orders. So this may be a way for you guys to be able to have more of a snapshot of everything that happened that day, or, you know, include more clients at your site so that you're not having to go through individual client charts. I'm really hoping that this is helpful to you guys for that purpose. All right, let me get out of here. I've also requested that we have a button added that would just take me back to the main screen, because sometimes it is difficult to find my way back home to where I'm trying to get to. So I'm on page 28. I just want to talk briefly about the Reports tab, viewing lab reports and results. When you guys get connected to LabCorp, all of your results are going to come back into the PANDA system automatically, which is going to be so awesome. You're not going to have to worry about any paper lab results. You're not going to have to upload stuff to PANDA. You're just going to come into the patient chart. You're going to see on the Reports tab any reports that have come back in or results that have come back in for Pink Panda. Ignore these HL7. We've just been doing some different testing. So all of your results are going to come back looking like this with clinical report, final reported. It's going to list the lab, provider, the order number, the date that the lab was sent, and then your facility will be listed here. It will also tell you the beginning, the receive date of the actual lab result. You'll notice that all 4 of these results are abnormal in some way. So you'll always see that A when you have an abnormal result. I'm just going to go ahead and select this one and let's open it. So it's going to come back just the same as it does now on paper. It's the same type of format. It's going to have, let me make this a little bit smaller so we can get the whole result on there. But it's just going to be similar to what you guys get back from LabCorp right now. It's going to have patient demographic information, specimen information, client info, and then it will also have your test result obviously towards the bottom of the form. One cool function in here that I really like is there's a history button here. Obviously, we've been pretty busy with this result. You guys will not see it in this format, but what is neat is it'll show you who viewed the result. So let me give you a different example. I apologize. Let me get back to Pepper Smith. He's my go-to for labs. There should be a screenshot in your training manual on page 29 actually of that history functionality. So it'll say who the user is, what facility they're associated with, and what they did with that lab result, if they viewed it, and what time. So you can always check to see if a doc, you know, has had time to be able to go in and view a lab result, or if you need to say, you know, hey doc, this result came back, just want to give you a heads up, I see you haven't checked it yet or haven't had time to look at it. So let's see this result here. So I feel like this results functionality is pretty straightforward. You just go in, you select the result that you want to see, and you hit open. And then you'll see this one's probably more familiar to you guys since you guys do work with LabCorp. Let's talk about detailed search, because this functionality, I can see you guys wanting to use this functionality too. This again is going to allow you to see results on multiple patients in one location. So hopefully we'll alleviate some of that going back and forth between patient charts like we talked about. So you'll see the detailed search buttons here up at the top. This is going to allow me to search by patient name. If I wanted to search by the report type if I just was looking for lab results, or if I was looking for radiology results. If I was looking for the authorizing provider, maybe I only wanted to see reports for Dr. Holland that have come back, you can do that. I think the most common is going to be the receive date from and to. I think that would probably be a wide variety. You'd be able to see all the patients' results that had come back during this time period. So I'm just going to go ahead and just do it by date. Let me backdate a little bit here. And again, if I leave the receive date blank, it's going to pull all those results that have come back up to today's date. So I'm going to search, and the system is going to show me every single result that's come back into the system during this time frame. Again, you can note the abnormal results here. You can select all, you can print all. Over time, you're going to be able to use the customized grid functionality, since we haven't had this over a period of time and haven't been placing the same types of orders. But if you always place a CBC, let's say you check that every month on a certain patient, or a lipid panel every month on a patient, over time you'll be able to see a cumulative report of those lab results. So let's say that I just want to see this one. It's abnormal. Double check it. So you'll be the exact same format. So basically what you can do is, if you want to see all results that have come back for this week for all clients on the mountain, you guys can use this functionality. Instead of going from patient chart to patient chart, you can come here, you can view the results. Okay, I've checked that result. Now let me check something for PANDA that's come back as a result. So I do think that that functionality is going to be helpful. I hope you guys are thinking the same thing. All right, you know what, guys, that's all I had to cover for this training. I feel like you guys, we already went through different components of the system, the layout of the lab system. Who has questions about anything to do with labs or radiology? Or if you guys want me to walk through placing another lab order or preference list or anything like that. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear there's not questions. I'm hoping that means that everybody has good understanding of this section in the PANDA system. If questions do come up, please reach out to me anytime. I'll definitely walk you through it or help in any way. We can always jump on a go-to meeting and walk through things on the screen if that's necessary. But I really appreciate all of you that were able to attend today, and I hope it was helpful. And like I said, please reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you so much for your time.